Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 186, and it's about when boundaries backfire. Now, before we get into it, y'all, this new microphone is insane. I had to record that intro like 3 times. Once because I have a candle. I pretty much always have a candle burning in my office while I'm working, and this one was sort of sputtering extremely quietly, and the mic picked it up. Wild. And the second time I tried to record it, my stomach growled, and the mic picked it up. You know, that sort of as your digestion is working. Like, no one needs to know that. Of course, I've just told you, but you know. First things first, a little housekeeping. Friday at 12 p.m. was the official close of the Audacity project in its current incarnation. That's 9 years, 30 cycles, and 400 artists served. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. You're too kind. Oh. Now I know I owe y'all a podcast about why I decided to close it. It's just too soon. Like, I am not ready to do that yet, so I'm not going to. But people have been asking me, like, how do you feel now that it's over? And like, honestly, I feel really, really at peace and happy about it, and so proud that I have gotten to do this work in this way. And the strange thing is that I don't feel like I'm going to be really changing what I do. I'm still doing the same thing. It's just going to be in a different container and for a different purpose, but actually the same purpose, if that makes sense. But anyway, we are halfway through May, a little bit more than halfway through May, and I have been working my ass off, and slow work June is just around the corner, and I can taste it. I can taste the beach walks and the hammocking. And I'm also, I'm expecting the existential crisis any day now. So far, it hasn't shown up yet, but I will keep you posted. So let's get into the meat of today, when boundaries backfire. And I think that I have talked a lot about boundaries. If you are a person still struggling to set them yourself, I would recommend episode 160, The Truth About Boundaries. I will link that in the show notes for anyone who missed it or is interested. And I'm not going to use today's episode to renege on anything that I have said, because I mean it, every single word. However, if you come from a place of people-pleasing and codependent behavior, you may swing very hard into the other end of the spectrum once you learn how to put boundaries in place and to defend them. And this is a good and healthy thing. You have hypothetically spent a lot of time adjusting yourself and your behaviors to the emotional taste in the room, to other people's expectations, and other people's desires. So once you decide to stop doing that, that's a good thing. But today I want to look at what happens when you do swing hard to the other side of the pendulum, which means you are so well boundaried that you put yourself into a box. And those wonderful and hard-won boundaries can become cement walls. I'll give you a very meta example of this. An external boundary that I've had in place for several years is not to agree to a meeting with no set objective. Now, this was a good boundary because I attended a lot of Zoom calls that didn't really have a point, and I realized it halfway through the call. I'm like, we're not actually going to get anything done because we didn't say what we were here to do. So I stopped taking those kinds of calls. I was also on Zoom way too much, and that was one of the ways that I cut back on my Zoom calls, was just putting that boundary down. Fast forward. A few months ago, and even right now, you may have seen a survey circulating on Instagram called What Does Circus Pay? Now, people have been trying to collect information about what circus pays for well over a decade, but there was something about the way this particular survey was constructed, how it was distributed, that really intrigued me. So I started chatting with the duo that created it, and that duo is Duo Illumi, and their names are Alicia and Deelia. And I will link their Instagram profile in the show notes. But, I reached out, we started chatting, and they were like, we'd like to meet you, like, can we chat? Now, previous Rachel likely would have adhered strongly to the boundary of not accepting a Zoom call because there was no set agenda. However, because I'd had that boundary for a while, I actually have more room around it, more space around it, if that makes sense. And I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. And last Tuesday, we finally got to have our call, and we met on Zoom, and oddly and kind of beautifully, that was the same day that I delivered the last lecture of the Audacity project. Y'all, I can't tell you how glad I am that I said yes to that call. They are lovely, lovely people. So smart, with so much experience, and there's 2 of them. And it was just a really profoundly beautiful pass the torch moment, because I'll keep coaching, I'll keep doing what I do, whatever that is exactly. More clarity later, after the existential crisis has passed. But I'm no longer going to be focused on solving the problem of what should I charge for this circus gig and what should my circus gig pay me. I've been having those conversations for a very long time. I'm sure that I'll continue to have them, but they're not going to be my focus. And it was just really wonderful to sit and see these 2 faces on a Zoom screen and say, it's your turn now. Like, it was marvelous. And we even did like a kind of a ceremonial passing of the torch, and like with a lighter. And now we have like a group WhatsApp called Torch Gang. And if I had been a battle axe about internal or external boundaries that I had set without reinvestigating how I felt about it, I would have missed that. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm also going to put a link to their survey called What Does Circus Pay? You can also just go to whatdoescircuspay.com and it'll take you straight there. It's a 3-minute survey. If you're working professionally in circus and at any level, please take a moment and go fill that out for posterity. But there have also been times where I realized my boundaries worked so well that I did miss out on something or a relationship that could have been more rich. So if you're still in the beginning stages of setting boundaries in the first place, you should probably ignore this podcast. Like you need to develop the skill of laying down a boundary around your energy, your time, and defending that boundary until it feels really good. But if you already know how to do that and you've been doing it for a while, that's who this podcast is for. Because at the end of the day, what is the point of a boundary? Like, they are designed to protect your time and energy and vitality for the purpose of feeling better, having a higher quality of life, and feeling a very real and palpable sense of self-sovereignty. They're meant to make your daily life more sustainable for your energy levels. And your energy levels will change, and you will change. So, too long didn't listen. The whole point of this podcast is just to say, don't be so staunchly protective of your own boundaries that you forget to reinvestigate why you put them there in the first place. Because you may find that you want to renegotiate them. Once you are comfortable with boundaries, and there's a natural side effect of being well-boundaried, which is you get stronger. You have fixed the leaks in the ship, so the ship can carry more. In short, your capacity grows. And having capacity doesn't mean, yay, heap more things upon me so that I can sink back down into the water. But it does mean that you have more room, more space with which to play, because now you can trust yourself to know your limits, or at least recognize them when you butt up against them. I'd be remiss here if I didn't mention Raquel, the capacity expert. That's her. It's Raquel, Dr. I think. Raquel Hopkins. I had to go over and look. I will link her profile in the show notes. She talks about capacity in a really beautiful way that sort of, it brings the pendulum back into a more neutral territory that isn't, you must protect yourself against all things and wrap yourself in cotton wool and don't ever do anything outside of the boundaries that you lay down. And I really like how she talks about the way that we talk about self-care lately. I think it does. It swung hard in the other direction. And the same thing is true that I said in the beginning of this. If you're still in the beginning journey of self-care, then that's where your focus should be. You should be learning how to do that, and building a sense of robustness around what it is that you need. However, if you have been doing that for some time, then yeah, it may be time to look at those practices and see where they are over-evolving into a kind of avoidance. There was something else that I wanted to mention today, which is an article that I read. It's a Substack from the Preamble, and that's Sharon Says So. It's just how I think of her, even though that's not her real name. Anyway, this was a guest post on the Preamble by Amanda White, who is a therapist, and I really like when she writes in because she always has a refreshing perspective. And the title of this essay was Stop Pretending That You Don't Care. And it's about how in our culture we have become so so overly sensitive to earnestness, so that when someone acts like they care a bunch, the kind of zeitgeist way to respond to that is ew. Like it gives you the ick. You get a little cringe. I'm going to give you a direct quote now. Begin quote, "The ick is something I've probably had hundreds of sessions about, so let me skip to the ending. The ick is rarely about the other person. It's that our culture has decided that openly wanting things, visibly and without irony, is embarrassing. And that genuinely caring makes you look stupid. So when someone shows up earnestly, we recoil." End quote. She goes on to talk about how we learn two things. One, to know what we want, but then to perform that we don't want it as much. I'm going to give you another quote. This performance costs more than you realize because you have to manage 2 layers at once, what you actually feel and what you show to the world. Most people think they're tired because they care too much, but they're actually tired because they've spent the day pretending that they don't. Eventually, the performance stops being a performance. You start to believe you shouldn't take anything seriously until one day someone asks you what you actually want and you genuinely don't know, because you've been so busy not wanting visibly that you've forgotten how to want anything at all. End quote. I think this ties in directly with when boundaries can work against you and sort of backfire and do too good of a job. It is possible for a boundary to become a gremlin. A gremlin will say, don't appear to want this too much. Don't be overly eager. This is embarrassing. It's cringe. It's ick. And I want us to begin leaning so far into the cringe that we overshoot the step. I think that we should normalize like, oh, that was cringy. Ha ha ha. Yay me, and congratulate yourself. This is something that I say a lot to artists who are beginning a new piece of work, and they begin to self-edit at the beginning. And they're like, well, that might be too much. I'm like, be too much. Be too much. This is not, it doesn't mean that you're going to be too much in the final presentation if you're creating for a finished product, but the beginning is not the time. That's the time to go full wanker. You're like, is this wanky? Be wanky. Go full wanker. You can edit later, not at the beginning. And if it doesn't feel good and you're like, oh, this is embarrassing, I feel humiliated, like my subject material is so personal and I just feel like this is icky and cringy. Good. You're probably onto something really cool. Don't let your good boundaries become cement walls that keep you from going full wanker. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to cut it just a couple of minutes short because my mother is waiting for me. We have a makeup Mother's Day. She was out of town, so we didn't do anything, which was fine by me because I deeply dislike Mother's Day for personal reasons. It's a hard day. But now it's just a Monday. So I'm going to go to Edisto and spend a couple nights with her, and we're going to be ridiculous and drink red wine and talk some shit and have a good time. And she's waiting for me. So off I go. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. I would love some requests. If you have requests for future episodes, please let me know. You can reach me always on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon, so extra velvet shout out to my wonderful patrons. Thank you so much for standing with me and for making this podcast and everything that I do possible. This could not exist without you. Until next time, my friends, go out there and be the full wanker. And don't go back to sleep.